Haters of Reddit, what's the worst first date you've ever seen? Story 1. Okay, so I have been a bartender and a waiter over the years and have witnessed a couple of really sad ones, a couple crazy ones, and one that was just brutal. This one was the best of them all, I thought. Good-looking dude, fit, clear-shaven, kind of looked like Jim Cantorai from the Weather Channel, but younger. 24, had to card him and slimmer. Sitting at the bar going on about how he had a date with this girl that his best friend was crushing on hard, that his friend just refused to ask her out because she was into him instead. He was really getting into his story when she walks in and he clams up like someone shocked him. She was by anyone's standards drop-dead good-looking and killing it in a little black dress and high heels. It was really that rip-the-record kind of moment. Anyway, she comes up and they do the little kissy-huggy greeting and she orders a tequila shot with a lime. He does one with her and they banter about getting that out of the way and move into a little more intense banter, and out of the blue this dude whistles at me. Shocked honestly, as the bar is pretty empty. He whistles at me again while I am looking at him trying to figure out if he really just whistled at me like a dog. Yo man, more shots. Disappointed, as he really kind of seemed like a nice guy, I go to pour him a shot and let him know I am not a dog, he does not need to whistle to get a drink. Sure man, no worries, just keep an eye out, we are gonna get lit, yo. I retire to the side bar real quick and one of the other guys working that night starts to talk to him while the girl goes to ladies' room. When she gets back he whistles at the other bartender again and shouts, "Hey man, where are my shots pronto?" This guy starts just hammering shots. Not crazy but pretty quick, he is though at least 5. Girl only did the one and is sitting there sipping at a wine. The dude, we will now call Yo, starts to get a bit sideways. Nothing big, just loud, laughing at his own jokes, talking over the girl every chance he gets. He then announces that he has to on a rock and walks to the back. The girl looks mortified and sad. She is texting away like a madman. Then I hear him in the back raising some cane and out he comes with a dude under his arm. They sit down and he starts talking to different girl at the bar. He is not really drunk but well on his way and says something out loud to the other girl about gay people and walks outside. His friend follows quickly after and the girl is left at the bar alone. 5 minuets later the friend walks in, sits down, has a drink with the girl. I hear him say that he put him in an Uber and sent him home. They walk to go to the place the other dude had reservations for them at. I honestly thought, yeah, good for you dude. About 30 minutes later Yo boy walks back in sober as the day he is born. Sits down, waves me over and apologizes for whistling at me. Give us $20 and buys us a shift drink for when we get off. I was off at this point and sit down to have mine with him. He lets me in on his game. He did it all for his friend. Got 12 drunk, played the fools and called him to come save the day. Honestly said he is a better man for her than me. She's really just not my type. I was stuck between awe and impressed. They all came in about a month later, looked all buddy-buddy, the trio of them. That whistled at me again, but I admit it was funny. Story 2. I work at a fairly nice Italian restaurant, where we do a lot of business. One night a man who I was not even serving came up to me while I was punching an order in on the computer and hands me 20 and a napkin with a phone number on it. He proceeds to tell me I am on the worst date of my life. This woman is horrendous and I have to get out of here. Take this 20 and please go to the nearest phone and call me and tell me that I have to get home right away. I don't care what excuse you make up, I just gotta get the out of here. Initially I thought he was kidding until 2 minutes later the guy who was serving him came up to me to tell me how wicked this woman was, and how he could tell the guy didn't want to be there. I promptly called that guy as soon as I had a free minute, one of my shining achievements as a server. Edit: when I posted this I didn't expect anyone to see it, so to reply to the most common questions, I called him and told him I was broke down on the side of the road and needed a lift. I never talked to the wicked woman. Consensus from the server in charge of her table was she was just overly rude and off-putting. Story 3. I was a waiter as a first job. It was an attractive young woman and an average-looking man. First off, these people were 30 and I have no clue why they decided to go to Applebee's for dinner. The guy was wearing plaid sleep pants and an oversized red zip-up Columbia. The woman was dressed more nicely, but it was still casual. All goes well until it comes time for entrees. This guy orders a ton of ribs, a few full racks, and refuses the girl her original order of a house sirloin, which was only about 6, less than a fifth of his order. The man orders a $4 salad and a water for her. The woman stops talking completely while the man talks about some crazy party he went to. The man guzzles a few strawberry quencher iced teas, says see ya Friday, and leaves her with a bill. She said the guy seemed nice when they talked on Tinder, but was very uncomfortable with him in real life, and afraid to say something. A coworker and I paid for her meal, and later she and the same coworker starting dating, and they are engaged now. Not as interesting as everyone else's for sure, but I thought I'd share it. Story 4. Served a couple a few months ago. Every time I walked over, he would always be the one talking, and she would just be sitting there not having a good time. At the end I asked if it was one bill or separate, and she immediately piped up separate. I go and take his payment, and as I hand over the debit machine to the girl, I see the guy take his phone out and start swiping through Tinder. Story 5. It was one of my first dates where the waiter definitely could sense the awkwardness. I was a junior in high school. I had been flirting with a senior for a couple months and asked her out the day I got my license. I picked her up from her house and within 1 minute of being in the car she got a phone call. One of her best friends died of a brain aneurysm earlier that day. I told her that we could delay the date and offer to take her home, but she declined and insisted we carry on. We get to the restaurant and she is crying at the table. I didn't say any words to her other than "Are you okay?" the whole date because she was either texting her group of friends or couldn't make out words due to being so hysterical. The waiter kept coming by and sensed how awkward I was feeling. Out of all my restaurant experiences, I have never received my entree and check so fast. The waiter was a true bro. Story 6. I was working at a Mexican restaurant at the time. I was waiting on a couple, and I could tell it was a first date by the questions I heard them asking each other. Anyway, towards the end of their meal there was this Hispanic girl sweeping next to their table, and the woman looks at her, holds out the remains on her plate and says, "Would you like to take this home to feed your kids?" I stood there in complete shock. This woman spoke no English, but she could tell this random woman was completely degrading her. The sad thing is she seemed like she really thought she was doing a good deed. Her date looked so embarrassed. Story 7. Olive Garden. Around 2014 or so, from like 730 close on a weeknight, middle-aged man of sub-average attractiveness was sitting alone at a table with a glass of water, insisting that his date would be just a few minutes. There's traffic. At around 9:15, manager had to come out and let him know that the restaurant would close at 10, and if he'd like to place a food order, he should probably do it now. He ordered a bruschetta appetizer, and said again that his date was on her way and they'd order when she got there. 9:45, this beautiful woman walks in and awkwardly stands by his table. I couldn't hear the conversation they had, but the man then asked for a box for the appetizer, and they wound up leaving together without her even sitting down. Story 8. Once witnessed a date where the dude talked about how special he was and how his mind wasn't like other people's for the entire date. The girl was politely nodding along, and every time she tried to get a word in, he'd cut her off. Absolutely brutal. Edit. The amount of women commenting on how they've been on this exact date before is upsetting. Story 9. I'm a waitress at a mid-range priced bar grill. Just yesterday, a younger couple came in, and as I greet them I ask if they want anything besides water. Conversation is as follows. Girl, may I have a Coke or Pepsi? Boy, God, Aaron, I'm paying. Girl, water will be fine actually. My heart immediately sank, because you bet he tipped less than 10 too. Story 10. Not a waiter, but my first date with a girl my brother's GF set me up with might count. The waiter was awesome. Brother's GF set me on a blind date with her friend who is, in her words, totally into heavy guys, so I go to pick her up and my alarms go off. While she's not a 910, she's definitely what most would consider out of my league. I try to talk to her on the ride. At most I get non-committal grunts of words in response. We get to the place to eat, a steakhouse that's noted in my area for being nice but not super expensive, and get our table. We order our food. While waiting I try to talk to her, simple things, she from around here, got any hobbies, etc. etc. She just taps on her phone and gives me small 2-word answers for the most part. Food shows up, she picks up her plate and heads to a whole other table, tells me her friend showed up, I apparently was not invited. Meanwhile, she's sitting at this other table with a good bit of expensive food. I blink for a bit, then call the waiter over and explain to him what's up. I want separate checks. He agrees. I go ahead and pay for my food. She begins ordering drinks, not just for her, but all of her friends. I just finish what I can of my food. About an hour later she comes back over and says she's ready to go. I wave the waiter down and tell him she's ready to go. He brings her a check for well over 100. She just smiles and looks at me and pushes it towards me, explaining I was paying. I push it back and tell her I'm not. Get up, smile at her. I've had a lovely time tonight. I hope you have good luck in paying your tab and finding a ride home that doesn't involve a police cruiser. Brother's GF began blowing my phone up an hour later about how could I do that to her friend. I shut her down real fast. So whoever that waiter was, you're the man, keep the 20 tip. Story 11. When I was in high school, my college-age sister took me to a concert. While we were waiting for the show to start, we noticed a guy and girl in front of us who were clearly on a first date. Their conversation was so awkward that it literally devolved into talking about the weather. Brutal. Because we're terrible people, my sister and I decided to make fun of the couple by mimicking their embarrassing conversation. After a few minutes of our antics, the guy half turned his head toward us with a look of pure desperation on his face, as if to say, for the love of God, please don't make this nightmare worse than it already is. I'm begging you. We stopped. A few weeks later, my sister came home from a party and told me, remember that guy we made fun of at the concert? I just met him, we're going out on a date. They are now married with 4 children. Story 12. I work at a country club that is up to its ears in old money that uses said old money to make more new money. The membership fees cost more than a year at my university. To say money is not an issue there would be an understatement. Anyways, I was serving a young couple and the power imbalance was phenomenal. She was the daughter of one of the board members and the entire staff knew her. Read her father's club account was major money. And the gent, well, he wasn't a member, and certainly looked like he was just the average broke college student. He was wearing plain but nice clothes and she was dressed to the nines in fashion. The date seemed to go smoothly enough. Nothing out of the ordinary, until she gets up and leaves the table before I have brought out the bill. I bring the bill to the counter knowing it is well over 300 worth of food and drinks, all things SHE insisted on ordering, 2 bottles of top-shelf wine, neither finished 2 steaks, when he asked for the chicken and she insisted on him eating steak like a man, and he solemnly goes to pull out his wallet and starts tearing up apologizing that he won't be able to tip. I mean, I've never had a customer cry over not being able to tip, and he further explained he was a server too and that she didn't know he wasn't rich and she left because he had told her about his scholarship. I was flabbergasted, and kindly reminded him that at this country club we do not take credit cards nor cash, we only charge to accounts. And so her father got a hefty bill. Rest assured he signed a handsome tip to me in her name. Club policy is that the registered guests may sign for their host member. Given that the members have invited them, it was entirely satisfying. Last I heard, her father cut her off. I can't help but smile at all the life lessons she is learning, like working to go on dates. Story 13. I own a bakery. I see a lot of shitty first coffee dates and shitty people in general, but there's one that will always be the worst for me. This happened at my bakery maybe 6 months into our first year. Two boys come in, chatting normally, clearly on their first date. They're both young, maybe 15 at most, and adorably nervous. They order at the counter and go find a table. Sitting close, one of them starts holding the other's hand, playing with his fingers, just being cute. All of a sudden this woman comes up and starts berating one of the boys. It was his mother. She had shown up because she wanted to meet the girl because her son was being cagey about who it was. I assume he had mentioned where they were going because she wouldn't let him out if she didn't know. She starts screaming and crying about how her son could do this to their family. Doesn't he know she wants grandkids? His father would be so ashamed if he was still alive. Doesn't his father's memory mean anything? She then tells him that if he keeps up with this, don't bother coming home, and then marches out of our shop. This poor boy is just weeping, while his not even really boyfriend is trying to comfort him, completely bewildered with what happened. Story 14. Not a first date story, but pretty funny. On my boyfriend and my second anniversary, we went to a small dinner at a nicer place. Nothing fancy, but not Applebee's. My boyfriend is on his phone trying to find an old picture of our first date. He dug through his phone for like 20 minutes while I sat there and talked to him, when all of a sudden two girls drop a note on our table. It said it's a first date, talk to each other, and some other like that. Apparently they thought out first date was awkward and uncomfortable. Now every time he gets on his phone, even though it's almost 2 years later, I think of that date night. Edit no more is. Story 15. Oh, he made a comment to her about how he's not Jew, why so she should order whatever she wanted. She was Jewish. Spent the rest of the evening in silence as he went on about how his ex-girlfriend was anorexic and so annoying about food. He was happy to be on a date with a woman who could eat like a normal person. So weird. Edit. One of the only times she spoke was to respond that she was Jewish. It was a quiet night in my restaurant, and I was nearby doing siddur work. She seemed like a very shy person. Story 16. Worked at Applebee's. This woman was the worst woman I've ever waited on. She was needy and slurped down her iced tea like there was a worldwide shortage. He was silent. He didn't talk once except to order his quesadilla burger, and she just kept going and going, prattling on. And she was mean too, talking down about how people were losers to be servers, and how much better it was to work in a shop. At the end, he went to the bathroom and just never came back. He apparently jetted out the side door where the to-go girls worked and gave them a 20 to give to me. Worst woman was just sitting there and waiting for him to come back. I stood there at the server station just waiting for her to realize he wasn't coming back. So after 10 minutes, she just started crying, pushes her chair over, and flounced out. I didn't get a tip, but it made my night. Story 17. I used to work at a little shitty diner place. Definitely not the type of place to bring a first date. There was this guy who'd come in every Friday with a different girl. He was a very good-looking dude and was always super polite and very nice to me, but he was super awkward. The girls would look kind of skeptical as they walked in, probably because of the crappy diner scene. Every week, about halfway through the meal, like clockwork, the girls would develop these get me the outta here faces. That's when I would bring the check. They always boxed up their food and left right away. I had the chance to talk to one of them while he was in the restroom. Apparently he wasn't harmful. There was just something off about him that the girls didn't like. His persistence is on point though. Story 18. Man and woman cozy in a booth. Different woman storms in through the front door, literally dragging two kids behind her, right past the hostess station to stand defiantly in front of the couple, and proceeds to, dude was nailed. I work in an Italian restaurant. A few years ago I waited on a guy and girl who met for the first time upon arriving at the restaurant. There were awkward pleasantries exchanged at the door, and then they were seated. When I was taking their order, the guy asked if we had soup because he had mouth surgery a few days prior and chewing food was still a little rough. We don't have soup, so I explained that the softest food on the menu is gnocchi. He ordered the house gnocchi and proceeded to cut each tiny dumpling into 4 or more pieces and slowly chew each piece. He ate that entire dish over a 3-hour period, and the girl stuck it out for the whole thing. She looked miserable, and I'm pretty sure they never saw each other again. Story 19. Had an obvious first date where the lady was grilling the guy on how much money he makes and he didn't really want to answer. It was awkward serving steak and salad during an interrogation. Story 20. I was working in a small restaurant with 2 floors. A woman and a man came in and I had a table for them upstairs. It looked like they had a first date because they were asking those getting to know each other questions. After ordering food, the woman had to go to the toilet, which is downstairs. As she walked to the stairs, the food arrived. She walked down, tripped and fell all the way down, knocking her head on the ground. 2 colleagues immediately rushed over to her to see how she was doing. She was unconscious and bleeding from her head, so they called an ambulance. I went to the man while he already started eating and told him his partner didn't know how to call her, fell down the stairs, and that she was unconscious and that an ambulance was on the way. He walked to the stairs, looked down and walked back to his table to finish his food. Later the ambulance arrived and I asked him if he wanted to go with him to the hospital, and he said no while finishing her food as well. It was so awkward he just sat there for another 45 minutes eating, drinking, paid the bill and left. I still don't know what kind of relationship they had and whether the woman is okay. Story 21 late to the party here, but I was bartending in New York and watched this couple that had met on Tinder have their first date sitting at my bar. The girl was a complete maniac. Kept bringing up the fact that the dude she was with could be a psychopath and could murder her. He had given no indication of this and went on Tinder while he was still sitting beside her at the bar. Kept telling him he was lucky that she agreed to meet him at all and she didn't think he'd be this boring. She ordered about 5 or 6 lits and several shots. He literally just had 2 beers. She made him pay for everything. My favorite part of the show was that he excused himself to go to the bathroom and left through the fire escape. Absolutely brilliant. To be clear, there was only one official entrance and exit. This dude escaped out the back and she went searching for him. Straight up thought he had disapparated out of the bar. Story 22 I have seen everything from crying to ketchup ramekins being thrown. The only obvious first date I ever noticed is as follows. Above average looking guy sits down and says he is waiting on his blind date to show up and I tell him he'll keep my fingers crossed. The girl shows up a half hour late and she is not attractive. She was probably 120 pounds heavier than what he was looking for, and her face. I got an oh well look from the guy when she was in the bathroom. He didn't say anything to me, just had his dinner. Every time I refilled the glasses, there was conversation with both people smiling. At the end of the meal he paid the whole tab and tipped well. After they said their goodbyes I caught up with the guy. I had finished all my tables and wanted to know if he was seriously okay with being set up with someone so obviously not in his dating demographic. So I asked how his meal and date was, then asked if there would be a second date. He laughed and said not likely. I told him that's what I thought, but they seem to be having a good time. He told me. That girl probably hasn't been on 3 dates where the guy actually paid and was genuinely nice. Why wouldn't I be a gentleman? My friends are dicks, but she did nothing wrong and deserves to be treated like a beauty every now and then. Edit you can't blame him for acting appropriately according to his genetics. We can't choose our genes. All we can do is be decent to one another. Story 23 So, I don't know if it was a first date but hopefully last date, but last week I had a couple come in, and the man thugged out and in his late 20s began cussing about everything on the menu. Yo, why do you pick this shitty place? All this on the menu is expensive as mid-priced lunch place. 90 locals and regulars of the senior variety for the most part, so dude continues to cuss and berate his girl, and she doesn't say anything. I come over and take their order, and he refuses to get anything. She gets some chicken strips, and then he starts in on me about how this is a snobby old white folk place. At this point the regulars are noticing, and one went to the owner to let him know what was going on, and he came out, hands on his hips and said you have 2 choices. Either stop the profanity and act civilized, or leave my establishment. The man said I don't gotta do yo. Meanwhile the girl is now quietly eating her chicken, not saying a word. Owner goes and calls the cops, because now this guy is getting louder and ruder to his poor date. When dude sees the cops roll up, he takes off, leaving the girl sitting at the table. Officers intercept him in the parking lot, and at the same time go and question the girl, asking if he's ever hit her, if she feels safe, etc. etc. Man, I felt so bad for her. Story 24 Not a waiter, but my friend had a date that was so bad her waiter comped the meal. Girl and guy on a date. Guy is really awkward, borderline weirdo, no chemistry. My friend would try to joke with him and he would look at her dead-faced, whatever. So all of a sudden 2 wicked drunk women come over to the table and start saying like you're too good for him girl, come home with us, this guy sucks, you need to dump him, and they start spraying him with silly string. He's like covered, they run out, he starts crying and then leaves, and she is just sitting there stunned. The manager and waiter covered her bill and she has a great story now. Edit for everyone giving me an attitude, I didn't silly string anyone. I wasn't on the date, I never said anything that happened was okay, and by good story I mean crazy, not like it's a positive outcome. The topic is bad dates and this story because it's a bad date. Story 25 I definitely have seen a lot of awkward last dates. I used to work at a very small neighborhood restaurant. Everyone that came in was a regular. Most were couples in their 40s to 50s out for a quiet dinner, but there was one standout. A very handsome man in his early 30s would come in, it seems, only to break up with women. About twice a month he would come in with a beautiful woman, and partway through their meal she would be crying. I always tried to clean the tables near them for as long as possible, but I never heard much of his speech. He always tipped well and was super nice to me and my coworkers. It was just brutal seeing him bring in a new lady and knowing what she was about to go through. Story 26 My bar has 2 floors, and on this night I was working upstairs. Couple came up with beers they already had bought, and sat in my section. I go to introduce myself. Girl seems nice, guy says nothing, just stares at his beer. They eventually get another round, and as I'm dropping off their drinks, I hear the guy slur out "Thank you very much, he's wasted. It was just a beer anyway, nothing too strong, but it will be his last round." I go about my business for a while. At one point I glance up at their table, the girl is gone, and the guy looks like all. I thought to myself, damn, he looks like he's about to, and right then he hurls, not a lot came out, and he tried to pass it off as a cough, but I saw enough pour out of his mouth onto his chair and the floor. I grab my barback in a trash can. Barback gets to work on the vomit. I love you D, wherever you are, and I put the trash in front of the guy. I told him to go to the bathroom. Take the can with you on your way. Then GTFO, he says nothing, just stares at his phone for a minute, then gets up and leaves. I race around looking for his date. I found her at the bar trying to pay her tab. I tap her on her shoulder and try to tell her about her date, but when she turned around, her face told me everything. The shame and embarrassment that glazed over her might make one think she was the one who just tossed her cookies. That's when she told me it was their first date. They had met through a mutual friend, and she really didn't know him at all. My bartender and one of our awesome regulars overheard. We paid her tab. She ended up staying at the bar hanging out for a while as the aforementioned regular bought her more drinks. Real nice lady. TLDR, don't on a first date. I served coffee at fairs on random occasions as a young teen 16 to 17 years old. A 22-ish-year-old from another fair booth came over and asked if she could trade a free coffee for fruit roll-ups. I said thanks for the offer, but no. She proceeded to ask every day of the fair and get rejected. On the last day of the fair, this dude comes over and tells me how rude I've been to his girlfriend and demands 12 coffees in exchange for fruit roll-ups. I say no and his girlfriend appears throwing a tantrum about how this is the worst date ever. What? Story 27. I work at IHOP. About once a week, two middle school early high school age kids come in and sit a table away from each of their parents and kiss and hug on each other excessively. One time I think the guy was getting a handjob underneath the table. The parents just maintain conversation and pretend not to notice. The kid is also a huge dickhead. Story 28. Obligatory, not a waiter. But my friend has a favorite coffee shop that she frequents, and every time she goes, the same guy is there with a different woman. Every time, my friend overhears the man saying the same things. Wow, you're gorgeous. You're the most gorgeous woman I've ever met. I've never met someone like you. Never. You're special. You're totally different from any woman I've ever known. You mean so much to me. By the end, the woman always looks either embarrassed, bored, or completely frustrated out of her mind. And the guy always looks so disappointed and confused about where he went wrong by saying the exact same cheesy things to every single woman he dates. It's pretty sad, really. Story 29. More a story of a non-date. I worked at a cafe, and it was a small local chain, so there were 2 other locations in the city. This guy sits down for about an hour and comes up to the counter and asks if we can call around to the other locations to see if this girl was there because they had a date planned and he was sure she must have just gone to the wrong location. We called to the other 2 locations and they said they never saw anyone fitting that description. The guy stuck around for another couple hours, buying 2 more drinks and a sandwich, just waiting until we finally closed for the night. I felt so awful for him. He seemed so crushed. Story 30. I once had a guy come sit at my bar who was waiting for his blind date. He orders a couple of drinks to calm his nerves. Well, he probably should have slowed it down to keep his mouth from working faster than his brain. Anywho, she shows up and is way out of his league. She is absolutely beautiful. She orders a drink and they start talking. I come back to check on them and I hear him talking about how much he hates children. He was saying things like how he hopes he never has any, and that he will never be stuck taking care of them, and how he wishes that kids couldn't be taken into public places so that he wouldn't have to be around them. She looked him dead in the eye and said, "Well, I have a daughter, and I love her very much." She grabbed her purse and walked out on him. The look on his face was absolutely priceless. Story 31. Obligatory, not a waiter. But it was the waiter who made it awkward. Let me set the scene. It was my first date ever. We were both 15, and since she wasn't out to her homophobic parents, I was just a friend, so we started the night with me lying to her mom. We went to this relatively nice place that has everything. Pizza, salads, fish, pretty even mix of families, dates, and old people. We wait like 20 minutes for a table, sit down, all normal. I should also mention him in a wheelchair. Okay, so the waiter comes by and is just taking too long staring at us, trying to figure it out. I'm used to this, but I can tell how uncomfortable my date is. So finally the waiter pours our waters and gives my date a menu. She doesn't give me one. 2 minutes later she's back with a braille menu. I'm laughing my off, a sincere but nervous laugh. My poor date is sitting there looking mortified. In the moment I'm thinking that she probably just has no experience with this kind of ignorance. That's okay, I'll teach her. Boy, was I wrong. I say to her it's okay, really to lighten the mood. She looks my dead in the eyes and says I had no idea wheelchair users were illiterate. In my 15-year-old social obliviousness, I thought she was joking, so I laughed harder. She looked so sad and broken and I realized she was dead serious. I stayed because I didn't have ride home. Worst dinner of my life. 010 Edit 1 spelling. Maybe I am illiterate. Edit 2 Hey, thank you for the gold. Story 32. I apologize for the length. Not a waiter, but a bartender in a college town. This happened last Wednesday. It was a slower night and a guy and a girl come down and take a seat at the bar. Clearly not students of the school I go to. I don't mean to sound judgmental or insensitive, but they did not dress talk drink look like students of the university. I check IDs. It's the guy's 21st birthday, offer them a discounted round and have a shot with them. Seemed like nice people, turned out to be from a small town near where I'm from and were staying with friends in town for the night. They buy a few rounds, we make small talk, same old. Girl keeps eyeing me and I'm getting the sense that she's into me. I keep my distance so as not to ruin this guy's birthday, but as she gets tipsier she calls me over more and more often for no reason other than to blatantly flirt in front of this dude. He can't stop glaring at me. Understandable. Dude goes to the bathroom. While he's gone she asks if I'm allowed to come out from behind the bar. I say yes depending on the scenario. She asks me if I could take a picture of her in front of the famous mural on the wall. Pretty much every student that has attended my school has a picture of it, so this wasn't an uncommon request. I say of course, and walk with her across the dance floor. She poses next to the sign. I snap a couple pics, and as I'm going to hand her her phone back, dude comes walking out of the bathroom. She looks at him and says something along the lines of "oh good, "Could you take a picture of us in front of the sign?" He reluctantly obliges, and she wraps her arms around me in the most uncomfortable loving manner she could manage, and I stand there like a prop. I felt terrible for the guy at this point. Another little while goes on and they're sitting at the bar. She calls me over and starts telling me about her ex and about how posting a picture to social media of her with an attractive guy, aka the picture she just had her date take of her and me, will definitely make him jealous. Dude literally starts crying and walks back to the bathroom. I walk away to talk to my bouncer just to let him know what was going on if things get out of hand. Dude walks out of the bathroom sobbing. He's doing his best to hide it. She sees him and realizes he's upset but seems to have no idea why. She asks if he would like to leave. He nods. As they're getting their coats on, she looks at me and asks me what time I get off and if I had a napkin and a pen. I'm shocked. I said I'd be late and had to study. She grabs a pen and napkin from the customers next to her and leaves her number with a heart anyway, all while this poor guy is standing there waiting for her. Then she pulls out her phone, opens up Facebook and starts asking me to add her as a friend so she could tag me. I told her that given the situation and the fact that we just met, I wasn't sure if that would be appropriate. She seemed to not hear me. Stands there for another couple minutes, then shows me her phone. It's the picture of us on her profile with a caption upgraded, implying that her and I were dating and I was a step up from her ex. She shows it to this poor dude and asks him if he thinks her and I look cute in the picture. Dude is holding back tears as best he can. I tell her that I think the picture is inappropriate and misleading and that it would be best if she took it down. She flips the out and immediately starts swinging at me from across the bar. She throws a cup at a wall, asks me how dare I and tells me how big of a piece of I was, yada yada. Dude is literally sobbing on the bar top at this point while his date is 2 feet from him trying to crawl across the bar and kill me. My bouncer comes and takes her outside and puts her in a cab. I apologize repeatedly to this poor guy, pick up his tab and give him some free passes to skip the line on busier nights. He said he'd had a rough go lately and was hoping his 21st would be a change for the better. I can't imagine looking back on your 21st for the rest of your life and thinking of a night like that. Still don't know if the girl was a terrible person or just incredibly oblivious. Probably a little of both. Edit grammar.